My name is Melissa Carter. I'm 33 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my family treated me like their maid. Not their daughter, not their sister, their maid. Every Christmas, Thanksgiving, and birthday, my parents would beam at my younger sister Emily, showering her with gifts, praise, and attention. Meanwhile, I was in the kitchen, scrubbing pans, refilling drinks, setting tables. I wasn't the guest. I was the help. And the worst part? I let it happen for years. But last Christmas, everything changed. It started with one phone call, the same way it always did. I was folding clothes into my suitcase in my small but sunlit apartment in New York when my phone buzzed. The caller ID flashed. Mom. I almost didn't pick up. I already knew what she wanted. Melissa, my mother said, skipping any greeting, her voice sharp as always. Cancel whatever silly plans you have tomorrow. We need you at the house. I stayed quiet, my hand tightening on the phone. Your sister is hosting a Christmas Eve dinner. 25 important guests, executives, investors, people who matter. You'll cook 25 guests. Less than 24 hours notice. No apology, no question. Just a command. I'll text you the menu, she added. 7 courses, 10 sides, desserts, wine pairings. Use the good china, don't embarrass us. Her tone wasn't a request. It was the same voice she'd used when I was 17 and she decided I'd be the one handling all the family meals because Emily needs to focus on her future. I looked at the plane ticket sitting on my nightstand. A business trip to Florida, a meeting that could change everything. I can't, I started. You can, she snapped, cutting me off. What else do you have to do? You don't have Emily's career. You should be grateful you can contribute somehow. That word, grateful. As if being treated like unpaid staff was a privilege. I pressed my lips together, biting back the truth. That I wasn't just Melissa with no career. I wasn't the daughter who couldn't keep a job. For the last 5 years, I'd been building something in secret. A company of my own. A company that, if everything went right, was about to explode into the national spotlight. But my parents didn't know that. They'd never asked. Melissa. My mother continued, her voice dripping with disdain. Don't disappoint us. These people are important for Emily. She's the star of this family, Emily. The golden child. The one who got a new car at 18, a condo at 22, and her own PR firm at 25. Funded, of course, by my parents. I'd watched her glide through life, cushioned by their endless support, while I was told, be useful. At least you can cook. I glanced at my open laptop. An email glowed on the screen from Victoria Hayes, the CEO of one of the largest resort groups in the country. A contract worth $2 million was waiting for me if I showed up in Florida on December 26th. For once, I had to choose. Be their servant again or show up as the businesswoman I'd fought to become. I didn't answer my mother. I simply ended the call. By midnight, my suitcase was zipped, my documents neatly packed, my flight confirmed. As I slid into bed, memories surged back like waves crashing over me. The Thanksgiving when I was 19, I'd spent 12 hours in the kitchen only to overhear my father bragging to his friends. Emily's our pride. Melissa, she helps out in the kitchen. The Christmas when Emily was introduced to the family as our successful daughter in public relations, while I stood behind a tray of hors d'oeuvres. The summer I came home to find my childhood bedroom gutted, my trophies and books boxed up in the basement. The space had been converted into Emily's walk-in closet. Every moment was a reminder. In their eyes, I wasn't Melissa Carter, a person with dreams, skills, or ambition. I was just a pair of hands, but not anymore. This time, I wouldn't bend. As I set my alarm for the morning, I whispered into the dark, they'll finally see who I really am. Of course, I didn't know then just how spectacularly it would all unravel. That my mother's sneer, my sister's smirk, and their blind arrogance would collide with reality in front of the very people they wanted to impress. And when it did, the fallout would be so public, so undeniable, that my parents would be left begging for forgiveness. But forgiveness, I knew, would come at a price. By the morning of December 24th, my decision was final. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't going to my parents' house to be their maid. I was catching a flight to Florida. Still, as I zipped my suitcase shut, a knot of guilt twisted in my stomach. It's strange how old roles cling to you. Even when you know you're right, that little voice inside whispers, "They'll hate you for this." My phone buzzed again and again on the kitchen counter. First Mom, then Emily, then Dad. What I did best. In their eyes, that was cooking, serving, staying invisible. I slipped the phone into my bag and carried my suitcase downstairs. My Uber was waiting. As the driver pulled away, I stared out the window at the gray winter streets, forcing myself not to turn back. At the airport, as I waited for my flight, guilt tugged at me one last time. Against my better judgment, I pulled out a notepad and wrote down the numbers of 3 catering companies I knew offered emergency holiday services. I even tucked one of my own business cards alongside the list. Melissa Carter, CEO, Horizon Catering Group. Then I left the note on my counter. It was a ridiculous gesture, really. My parents didn't even know where I lived. They had never once asked. But still, I left it there. A part of me wanted to say, "I tried. I gave you a chance." When I finally boarded the plane that evening, I turned off my phone. The last thing I saw before switching it to airplane mode was a message from Mom. "If you walk away from this, you're no daughter of mine." The plane lifted into the night, and with it, something inside me lifted too. For the first time in years, I exhaled without the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. Connecticut's lights blurred into the distance until they were nothing but specks. But while I soared above the clouds, chaos was unraveling back home. When I turned my phone back on the next morning in my Florida hotel room, the messages poured in all at once. I scrolled through them in silence. Emily's furious texts about guests arriving to bare tables. Mom's accusations, calling me selfish and ungrateful. Dad's pleas, begging me to come home and fix this. Then came the frantic updates. Pizza boxes delivered in place of the lavish feast my mother had promised. Guests leaving early. Laughter turned into whispers of embarrassment, and one line, repeated more than once, made my breath catch. Victoria Hayes was there tonight. Victoria, the CEO of one of the largest resort groups in the country. The very same woman who was flying to Florida to meet with me in less than 24 hours. My parents had begged me to cook for her, convinced she was there to help Emily's career. They had no idea she was about to change mine. By the time I put my phone down, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. For years, I had been their safety net. The one they leaned on to maintain their perfect image. And the one time I chose myself, their carefully polished world collapsed. I ordered room service and ate quietly, savoring the simple fact that the meal was mine and mine alone. No one barking orders, no one criticizing, no one watching to see if I measured up. Later, as I laid out my presentation materials for Victoria's team, my assistant's text came through. Forbes confirmed your story for their 40 Under 40 feature. Congratulations, boss. Boss, a word my family had never used for me. I leaned back in the hotel chair, staring at my laptop screen, and let out a slow, almost disbelieving laugh. Back home, my mother was probably still fuming, Emily still sulking, my father still scrambling to patch their reputation. And all the while, the woman they'd wanted me to impress as a servant would soon be shaking my hand as a partner. Tomorrow morning, I would walk into that boardroom not as the family disappointment, but as the CEO of Horizon Catering Group. And when the truth reached my parents, they would finally realize the daughter they dismissed as a maid had become the very person their world revolved around impressing. The irony was almost too perfect. Christmas morning in Florida felt surreal. While my parents and sister were likely still reeling from last night's disaster, I was sipping coffee in a resort suite overlooking the ocean. For once, I wasn't waking to the sound of my mother's voice barking orders, but to silence. The kind of silence that feels like freedom. I spent the morning reviewing my presentation one last time. Horizon Catering Group's growth charts, client testimonials, and expansion plans were all laid out neatly in my portfolio. But even as I rehearsed my lines, my mind kept circling back to one detail I couldn't shake: Victoria Hayes had been at my parents' house last night. Would she connect the dots? Would she remember my last name? By evening, I was dressed in my best navy suit, nerves buzzing under my skin as I walked into the resort's private dining room. The pre-meeting dinner was meant to be casual, a way to build rapport before the big contract signing. Victoria arrived a few minutes late, striding in with the quiet confidence of someone used to commanding rooms. She greeted me warmly, though her eyes held a tired edge. "Melissa, it's good to finally meet you in person," she said, extending her hand. "I've been following Horizon's growth for a while now. Impressive work." I thanked her, but before I could steer the conversation toward business, she let out a small laugh and shook her head. "You won't believe the evening I had yesterday," she said. My stomach tightened. "Oh?" "I was invited to a Christmas Eve dinner in Connecticut," she continued. The hostess promised this extravagant meal prepared by her daughter. 25 guests, all expecting something spectacular. When we arrived, the kitchen was bare. Nothing was cooked. Eventually, they served pizza. On Waterford Crystal, no less, I kept my expression neutral, though my pulse quickened. That must have been unexpected. Unexpected is one word for it, Victoria said dryly. Unprofessional is another. The hostess spent most of the evening blaming her older daughter for the disaster, calling her unreliable, unstable, even unemployable. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Someone even snapped a photo. She slid the screen toward me. There was my mother, cheeks flushed, pizza boxes spread across the dining table that had once been my pride as a child. Emily hovered nearby, smiling awkwardly while trying to pitch her PR services. I forced myself to glance at the photo without flinching. That does sound difficult. Victoria gave me a sharp look. "Melissa, you wouldn't happen to know a Margaret or Emily Carter, would you?" Funny coincidence. Same last name as yours, I met her gaze, my heart thundering. This was the moment I had rehearsed in my head 100 times. Reveal or stay silent. For now, I chose silence. "They're family," I admitted cautiously. Victoria leaned back in her chair, eyebrows raised. "Family?" "My parents and sister," I said, keeping my tone even. For a moment, she just stared. Then she laughed, not cruelly, but in disbelief. "So let me understand this. The same family who insisted their daughter was too incompetent to host a dinner, the one who served me Papa John's last night, is yours?" I nodded. "And that would make you the daughter they were mocking?" "Yes," I said quietly. "That would be me." The table went still. Even the waiter hovering nearby seemed to sense the tension and disappeared quickly. Victoria set her phone down and studied me. "They called you unemployed. A failure. Yet here you are running one of the fastest-growing catering companies on the East Coast. Why don't they know about you?" I swallowed hard. Because they never asked. For them, I was only useful when I was in the kitchen. They never cared about anything beyond that. For a long moment, Victoria said nothing. Then she shook her head slowly, a smile tugging at her lips. "Well, Melissa, that may be the most ironic story I've ever heard. Last night, they dismissed you in front of their guests. Tomorrow morning, I'll be signing a multi-million-dollar contract with you. Life does have a sense of humor, doesn't it?" Relief rushed through me so suddenly I almost laughed. Instead, I straightened my shoulders and said, "That's exactly why I chose to be here instead of in their kitchen." Victoria lifted her glass of wine. "To choices, then. The kind that change everything I raised my glass to," though my hand trembled slightly. Because while tonight felt like a victory, I knew the real reckoning hadn't even begun. My parents still had no idea who I had become. And when the truth finally hit them, it would shake the very foundation of the story they'd built about me for decades. The next morning, December 26th, I walked into Pinnacle Resort's boardroom with my portfolio tucked under my arm. My nerves hummed, but not from fear. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bracing for judgment from my family. I was stepping into a room where I would be valued for what I had built. Victoria Hayes and her team were already seated. She gave me a nod, and I began my presentation. Horizon Catering Group's journey, our growth from a $5,000 seed investment into a multi-million-dollar company, our client list, and our plans for expansion. My voice stayed steady, my slides crisp, my points clear. By the time I finished, the boardroom was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes before a decision is made. Victoria broke the silence first. Impressive. You've built this without investors? I nodded. No loans, no family money, no shortcuts. Just hard work and a team that believes in what we do. One of her executives, a man in a gray suit, leaned forward. And your family? Do they play any role in Horizon? The question hung in the air. I hesitated, then shook my head. No. My family has never been involved in my business. They don't even really know about it. Victoria gave a knowing smile. That much became clear to me last night. Before I could respond, her assistant hurried into the room with an iPad in hand. Ms. Hayes, you'll want to see this, she said. Victoria tapped the screen. Her expression shifted from curiosity to shock, then to something like disbelief. She turned the tablet toward me. On the screen was a LinkedIn post already gaining traction. A photo from the disaster at my parents' house. Pizza boxes stacked on fine china, my mother looking flustered, my sister trying to smile through it. And below it, a caption from one of the guests. When appearances matter more than substance. Dinner at the Sullivans last night was memorable. The post was going viral. Comments poured in, mocking the contrast between the setting and the reality. Then Victoria's assistant opened another window on the projector. This also just went live. It was Forbes. The 40 Under 40 feature right there on the screen. My photo on the cover, headline blazing across the top, From Invisible to Invaluable, How Melissa Carter Built a Catering Empire Without Family Support. The boardroom went silent again, but this time every pair of eyes was on me. Victoria leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. Well, that answers that question. The executive in gray looked stunned. So while your family was calling you unemployed and serving pizza, Forbes was putting you on their cover? I nodded, heat rising in my cheeks. Yes, they never asked about my work. It was easier for them to assume I had nothing going on. Victoria let out a laugh, genuine and sharp. I don't think I've ever seen irony this perfect. Last night, your mother told half a room you were useless. Today, you're sitting here as the CEO of the company I've been waiting 2 years to partner with. I swallowed hard. They created a version of me that was convenient for them. But that doesn't make it true. Victoria tapped her phone. Excuse me for a moment. She stepped into the hallway, speaking quickly into her receiver. I could see her pacing through the glass wall, animated, firm. When she returned, she looked amused. I just spoke to your mother, she said calmly. My stomach dropped. You what? She was desperate, begging me to reconsider last night's impression. Blamed everything on you, said you were unstable, said it was all your fault. So I told her the truth. My pulse hammered in my ears. What truth? That I'd just signed a $2 million contract with her unemployed, useless daughter. That the CEO she insulted in front of her guests was you. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Victoria continued almost casually. The sound she made when I told her. I don't think I've ever heard a grown woman lose all her composure that fast. She hung up on me. The table erupted in chuckles, but I just sat there, stunned. My mother, the woman who had dismissed me for years, had just been forced to hear the truth from the one person she wanted to impress most. When the contracts were slid across the table, I picked up the pen with steady hands. Melissa Carter, I wrote on the line, my signature bold and deliberate. The room applauded, champagne was poured, and congratulations circled around me. But my phone, buzzing endlessly in my bag, pulled at my attention. When I finally glanced at it, I saw dozens of missed calls and messages. From Mom, from Dad, from Emily. Melissa, Answer your phone now. Is this some kind of joke? Forbes? Please call us. We need to talk. I slipped the phone back into my bag. Not yet. For the first time in my life, the power was in my hands, and I wasn't going to give it away so easily. When the contract was signed and the champagne glasses clinked, I slipped away to the balcony of the resort. The ocean stretched out beneath the morning sun, endless and calm. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, the 20th time that day. This time I answered. Melissa. My mother's voice cracked like static. How could you humiliate us like this? Everyone is calling. They've seen the Forbes article, the LinkedIn posts. Do you know what people are saying? Yes, I said evenly. They're saying I built something without your money. Without your approval? Without your name, you made us look like fools, she shouted. No, Mom. You did that yourselves. You spent years telling people I was nothing. When the truth came out, the contrast was too big to hide. There was a pause, then my father's voice cut in. He sounded older, tired. Melissa, I should have asked more. I should have seen what you were doing. I didn't. And now it's too late to undo. For a moment, I almost softened, but then I remembered all the Christmases spent in their kitchen, invisible. All the holidays where my worth was measured in dishes served, not in dreams realized. It's not too late, I said carefully. But if you want to be part of my life, things change. I'm not your servant. I'm not your fallback. I'm your daughter, and that means respect, or nothing at all. Mom tried again, voice wavering. Melissa, please. Sarah's firm is collapsing. We've lost our standing at the country club. Your choices have destroyed this family. No, I said firmly. Your choices destroyed this family. Mine saved me. I hung up. For the first time, my hands didn't shake. 3 months later, I agreed to meet them. Neutral territory. A quiet restaurant in Manhattan, not their sprawling Connecticut house where I'd always felt small. When they walked in, I barely recognized them. My mother's confidence was fractured, Sarah's arrogance gone, and my father looked like he'd aged a decade. We sat down. I slid a single page across the table. These are my terms, I said. They read in silence. Equal respect or no contact. No more servant roles, ever. Public acknowledgement of my success. A genuine apology, not performance. Family therapy, non-negotiable. Sarah spoke first. I was jealous, she admitted quietly. You were better at everything, and Mom, she made me feel special by making you feel small. I let her do it because it gave me an identity. I see now how toxic that was for once. Her eyes weren't smug. They were tired. Honest. My father nodded. I should have defended you. Instead, I stayed silent. That silence made me complicit. I am ashamed. Then my mother, who had spent years treating me like a tool instead of a daughter, finally whispered, I'm sorry. Not just for Christmas Eve. For everything. I couldn't stand the idea of you surpassing me. I made you invisible so I didn't have to face that truth. The words hung there. Fragile. Almost impossible. I leaned back. I'll consider rebuilding with you. But it will be on my terms. If you want me in your lives, it has to be as equals. They nodded. For the first time, they didn't argue. 6 months later, I hosted a family dinner. Not at their house. At mine. A 2-bedroom condo overlooking Central Park. A place they'd never set foot in until that night. I didn't cook. My Horizon catering team did, because that was the boundary I would never cross again. As we sat around the table, served by people who called me boss, the reversal wasn't lost on anyone. But it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my identity. I raised my glass. Success doesn't need permission. Respect is not optional. And family? Family should never be built on making someone feel small. For once, my mother didn't argue. She simply nodded, eyes glistening. My father lifted his glass. Even Sarah managed a faint smile. And me? For the first time in years, I felt seen.